Hi, this is the How to Do Assignment number 2 lecture. I'm not going to do the whole thing. You will be comparing two newspaper articles, as the assignment sheet says. What I'm going to do in this is just show you the basics of what to do. So I'm going to this is the article that I'm going to be working on. I've given you two different ones, but I'm just going to type up here. I'm going to shrink the font a little bit to remind me what I'm doing. I'm going to type what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for independent clauses, dependent clauses, sentence modifiers, and we're going to say past part P, pres part P, infin P, prep P. So that's the sentence modifiers that we've been looking at. Noun modifiers, and they are going to be prepositional phrases, full relative clauses. Let's do it. Full relative clauses, reduced relative clauses, non-restrictive relative clauses. And we're just assuming that full relative clauses are the same as restrictive relative clauses. So these first two are restrictive relative clauses. There's some other things that you're going to be looking for, which will come out as we continue this process. So that's enough for now. What, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 things that we're looking for in the sentence modifiers, and then independent clauses, independent clauses. So as usual, we're going to start with just independent clauses. And I'm not going to do this whole thing because, as you see, this is rather long. So what we're going to start with is just looking for independent clauses. So here's one. We start off with one, so I'm going to underline it. And this I'm going to do quickly. It will take you longer, I imagine, though maybe you're zippy. Maybe I don't know anything. That's mark here, yeah. And this. And this, you, and then here's another one. I'm going to do the next paragraph as well. So the latest largest wildfire. B. Not B. You. Those cabins are empty now. So I don't know if you're beginning to see a pattern with how these sentences are constructed. What I'm doing when I'm looking for commas, I'm looking for periods to see where the independent clauses are here. And let's do this little tiny one. More than. I keep pressing the wrong button. Here. So, good enough. What have we got? So there's a lot of material that I haven't underlined. What is it? So huge plumes of it, that's sort of something, it's sort of like a noun modifier. We're going to ignore it because it's just sort of extra information. Then as far as the eye could see. So what do we think this is? I think, thinking about as far as, it's telling us something about space and time. So we can either think of it as a prepositional phrase, or we can think of it as a dependent clause. As far as the eye could see, there was smoke. That sounds like a dependent clause to me. And the reason I think that also is that we have a subject here, I'll do it in italics, and we have a we have an auxiliary verb and a main verb. So that suggests to me that this is functioning very much like a dependent clause. So what I'm going to do is underline this. Maybe I'll do it in bold for good measure as well. And I'm going to write subord conj here and then make it into a subscript. So you see what I did there? I didn't just say, oh, as far as what's that. I also looked at it in context. And the context suggested to me that it was a dependent clause because we had the I and then we had could see. So we have a verb phrase and we have a subject. Now, what's this next part? So much what? So much smoke, I would say, that the majestic views of this resort community were lost and the lungs of residents breathed it in and coughed it out. What do we want to think about that as? We know that we're looking at clauses because we've got a verb phrase here and a verb phrase here. So what could it be? There was smoke. Now, are we looking at something that's modifying the whole the whole independent clause? Or are we looking at that's modifying smoke? I would say we're looking at another dependent clause here because we've got these two verb phrases, and we can interpret it saying that there was so much smoke that. So it's modifying the whole sentence. If you said this was a relative clause, I probably would mark it correct, just because it's tricky. This is a tricky example. So I want you to know that I'm going to be flexible. If I can see the reasoning behind your labeling, and it's not obvious, like if you're looking at a prepositional phrase and arguing, like saying this is most definitely a relative clause, I'm going to mark that wrong because prepositional phrases have clear markers. But things like this, there's so much, they're a little tricky. So I'm going to treat this whole thing here as a dependent clause, and I'm going to mark the end of it by doing another subscript of DC. So you see what I've done there? Again, this is me thinking about it, me spending my time as a grammarian thinking what is our best bet, because sometimes things aren't particularly obvious. Okay, let's move down to this passage here. Now we've got this first part. What we see here is that we have a past participle, but it's not. It doesn't have an auxiliary. So I'm going to unbold it because what we're looking at here is a modifier on this noun Greer. And remember, we saw those examples with names. That name often is followed by a non-restrictive relative clause. And that's what I'm going to call this thing. Actually, I'm going to put the square brackets around because I want to do some more fiddling around in it. So NRRC. And then I'm going to make it into a subscript again. Okay, so does that make sense why this is a non-restrictive relative clause? Because it adds information, but it's not necessary. We have a name. We don't need a relative clause to identify the referent of a name. So within this, we've got a head noun. No, let's call this one the head noun. Head noun. So we've got town. We've got first here a prepositional phrase. Why? Whoops. I printed accidentally. Got a prepositional phrase. Why? Because it starts with of. It modifies town. A tiny town of log cabins. That's giving us more information. And then we've got nestled. We saw before that that's a past participle. But if in this context, it's a reduced relative clause because it's modifying a noun. Past participle phrases modify a clause. This is modifying a noun. And again, it's associated with this noun town. This is complicated, right? It's going to take you a little while to practice it. So your work on the wiki is going to be really important, just to spend your time doing this. I'm quick at it because I'm quick at the keyboard, and it's much easier if you practice using the keyboard. So everything else I can leave unlabeled. I don't want to confuse the issue by marking, say, this nestled word or marking the preposition. If I can say this is a prepositional phrase, I'm implying that there's a preposition here. Okay, let's keep going. Here we have another independent clause. What's after it? Well, this is easy, right? After. Subordinating conjunction. How did I do it? Underline bold. And now I'm going to do subord conj. And the authorities, this is the subject, and this is the what did I do? Bold. And this is the main verb. Just going to put verb down there. So that's important, that we can verify that this is a dependent clause, because we've got the after, subordinating conjunction, but we've also got a subject, and I'm going to make that all italic so it's clear what I'm looking at. A subject and a verb. So, good. Trudge through the smoke, blah, blah, blah. You want to do some more in this? What's this warning business? This is it modifying a clause or a noun? So the question you can ask is, who is warning? Can we answer that question? In this sense, it's the authorities. So we can first of all mark off through the smoke on Monday afternoon. This is a prepositional phrase. Through is a prepositional phrase. Warning the residents that the wall of fire was surging their way. And underline that. That whole thing is a reduced relative clause. Why? Because it modifies a noun. It's got this participle here, but no auxiliary. So we see that relative clauses can be very dense, very big. This is very common in journalistic writing. So you've got to be careful. You're looking at this whole thing, but it's not modifying a clause as a whole. It's modifying this noun, the authorities. It's telling you more about the subject. That may not be right. I just made a mistake. I'm going to leave it in this recording. This isn't modifying this noun at all. This is a present participle phrase. Why? So what happens, right? You got to think it through. So what we said before that participial phrases give you more information about the subject. But when I think about this whole thing, I think, hang on, it's talking about the whole action, like what's going on when the authorities are trudging around. So okay, and then we got to end it with a DC. If you don't understand what that whole palaver was, palaver means a bunch of nonsense. If you don't understand what happened then, basically, I was thinking, okay, so we've got something that looks like a reduced relative clause. Then I kept looking and I thought, what's it modifying? It's not just giving more information about the people who the authorities, it's giving us more information about the action of the authorities. And something that gives information about an action given by a combination of the subject and the verb, that's probably going to be a present participle phrase. And this is kind of nutty because it's all within a dependent clause. So because the warning business is not about the cabins, which is the subject of the independent clause, it's about this dependent clause. So these double brackets just say this all belongs together. And you see, whenever you have two brackets at the beginning, you have to have two brackets at the end. Wrong way. Whenever you have two brackets at the end, you have to be able to find two brackets, one there, one there. And this prepositional phrase is sort of separate. Okay, so that was very exciting. Let's try this last sentence. I'm going to separate it out just so we see it a bit more clearly. Residents of Alpine, Utrioso, and Bonita and other mountain communities enveloped in the smoke have recently received similar urgent warnings to get out. So what's the verb here? Verb phrase, have received. This enveloped business is giving us more information about the smoke. So I looked at all the verbs here. I looked at enveloped, I looked at have received. I decided, look, it has an auxiliary, it has a past participle, that's going to be the main verb in the sentence, the verb phrase. This enveloped in the smoke is giving us more information about the mountain communities, so it's going to be a reduced relative clause. So, and this whole thing, which I'm going to put in italics, is what? Is the subject.